What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another Thursday. It's time for some more about storytelling. On today's show, we'll be speaking with my friend John Ward from Vancouver, talking about all of his awesome experiences and some stuff about Kickstarter. So stick around.
Once upon a time,
in a galaxy far, far away,
it was a dark and stormy night.
gather round, my friends. Let me tell you a story.
All right. So as I record this episode today, this introduction, we are 10 days into my first ever Kickstarter for the second book in my Cloudbreakers series, which is called Peregrine, Cloudbreakers Book 2. The Kickstarter was actually funded in just shy of 48 hours, just over 48 hours, which I think is a pretty good, it's a pretty good measure of success. I mean, I'm definitely thrilled. I can't thank the people who've backed me enough. A couple strangers, but mostly friends and fans and family that have been with me since the beginning. So thank all of you who took the time to back and ask me questions and shared posts. And yeah, what an exciting roller coaster it's been, like the whole crowdfunding experience. Now, it's interesting because I didn't do it because I actually needed the funding to bring the project to life. I did it for the marketing experience, which has been awesome. And it was a bit of advice from a friend of mine. So let's jump into talking about Kickstarter and comic books with my good friend, John Ward. All right. How's it going, John Ward? Long time no talk to. It's awesome to finally get you on the show. How's things going?
It's going good. It's going good. It was a rainy day, I guess, today, but it's clearing up now. So so I feel good.
Yeah, you're in the paradise city of Vancouver, British Columbia, aren't you?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. I don't know about paradise. Rainy. Sometimes it's sometimes it's a paradise. Sometimes it's something quite different.
Yeah. You're not kidding. Yeah. How long have you lived in Vancouver, John?
I've been in Van since 2014. Yeah, so 12 years now.
Wow, that's a while.
Yeah, I was just thinking about that the other day. I mean, I moved to Canada in 2007, so it's almost 20 years of being here now. So it hasn't felt like 20 years, but yeah, according to all the records, it is 20 years.
Yeah. Wow. So, John, you have a pretty interesting background on how you ended up as a storyteller. Did you want to talk a little bit about your education and your background before you started writing?
Yeah. I mean, sure. I mean, some of you probably already know this, so I'll try not to bore everybody too much. But I guess for me, it all kind of started when I was in high school, because I was like a poor student, like many of us. I struggled with high school, and I kind of sort of left out and didn't really have the qualifications that I think everybody hoped I would have, and I basically was just in a punk band. That was kind of the thing that I was doing at the time, and we went and we played a lot of shows, and that's where I sort of really started to kind of get the sense of storytelling. You kind of always know that songs are, good songs are kind of like stories, and they kind of touch you in different ways. But being in the punk band was kind of really interesting, because I started to kind of see how stories were shaping me and my experience with the audience. And I think that's where it kind of started. I was always a big reader as a kid. I mean, I read horror books from a young age, and I loved it. And sci-fi, anything genre, but I sort of didn't think about doing it myself at all. And it was only kind of through the musical experience that I kind of really started thinking about storytelling. But all sort of good punk bands, we quit when we were ahead, and I kind of was a bit of a drift at that point, and it was really my love for Star Trek that kind of rekindled something in me, because I grew up in the UK. I grew up in Devon, in the southwest, and we're really, really far behind in terms of Star Trek. So, we were several years behind, and that's what I'm talking at the time. We didn't have anything that was simultaneous screening. So I kind of was like quite far behind with a lot of the shows, and I kind of realized that there was an opportunity to write for Star Trek. Because at the time Paramount had an open submissions policy, so they would take freelance scripts from people. Certainly, like Ron Moore, who went on to create Battlestar Galactica, he was a writer who kind of went in that route. Like he wrote a script and kind of got it to the right people, and they kind of brought him on as a freelancer and then onto staff. So I kind of started hearing about these kind of stories, and I was like, well, I love Star Trek like more than anything because I don't really have anything else going on. And I kind of like I sat down and I didn't have any idea about how to write. Like I just kind of like just started. And I ended up writing a script for Star Trek Voyager, which was actually designed to be the series finale.
No way.
Yeah, so that's how little I knew about writing and about the craft and the business of it. They would, even if they brought a script, they were never going to buy it for the series finale of a show. So I wrote the script and I sent it into Paramount. Foolishly kind of thinking I was going to go somewhere. But the interesting thing that happened in the meantime was that as I was writing the story, I kind of fell in love with physics. I kind of failed physics in high school and math too. And I found this book, I think it was called The Tao of Physics. And it kind of, as I was doing like my reading for Star Trek, I kind of fell into reading about this physics book, and that sent me into like a bunch of textbooks, and I started teaching myself physics, like inadvertently, in order to write the Star Trek script.
Awesome.
And so, I sent in the script, and I'm like, well, what am I going to do now? Like, I mean, they're obviously not going to ring me up tomorrow. So I kind of was like, well, I really like this physics stuff. Like, I wonder if I can kind of go to school for that. So I kind of figured out I could like apply. Of course, everybody rejected me. They're like, who the hell is this guy? Like, he doesn't have any of the qualifications necessary. My favorite one was that one university actually wrote back to me. They didn't just reject me; they wrote back to me and said that they did not believe I had the aptitude to study physics at an advanced level. Which kind of spurred me on. It was spurred me on to kind of go into it even more. And I kind of tricked and bluffed my way into a program. And then while I was there, I was still writing the scripts. I got my feedback from Paramount. Obviously, they were passing on my Voyager finale, but kind of that was where the bug was. So while I was studying physics university, I was still writing and writing films, and then started making films. And then physics, I finished my undergrad, and I was like, well, I'm just going to go do a PhD now. So I did that, and I was still I was doing my PhD in physics and still sort of making films, and that's kind of like this kind of left brain, right brain kind of thing for me was kind of where it started. And then since then, I kind of just kept going with at least with the storytelling aspect of it.
That's wild. I remember when I first met you at it was at Comic-Con, I think, in Victoria, was it?
Yeah, Cap City Comic-Con, RIP.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, RIP. Yeah, but now they have Island Fan Con, which is kind of cool.
They do, yeah, it's great. And it's the folks who do the Northern Fan Con up in Prince George. So I think it's a good show.
Yeah. I'll be there this June. I'm looking forward to it. It'd be one of my biggest Comic-Con appearances. So, but I remember meeting you and talking to you when you were promoting Scratcher at the time, your comic book Scratcher, and we had a long chat. And I remember absolutely being enamored by the fact that you had a PhD in physics and you're writing comic books. And, do you remember the piece of advice that you gave me? Like, because the advice that you gave me is the reason that Cloudbreakers is a thing now, is write what you know. Yeah. Do you remember that?
No, I don't remember that, but I mean, I think it's definitely true, and I'm glad that you remember it at least. Anyway.
Yeah, it was hugely influential when you said that. And you were like, if with your military experience, you could be writing those kind of stories, and I was just like, I took that to heart, man. So the world kind of owes you for Cloudbreakers now. So.
I don't know if I want to take that on, but I think congratulations on Cloudbreakers, because it's a great read, and like you definitely feel like there's an experienced kind of voice in it, which I think that's the gives it that verisimilitude. It's like, it's obviously like fantasy, but it's kind of like, it feels real. Like, it's so there's a tactility to the writing. So I'm glad that you kind of took that on and kind of leveraged your own experiences to kind of really sort of bring that story to life.
Yeah, thanks, man. I appreciate that. Yeah, yeah, and it's the same goes. I can see it too in a lot of your writing. Like, I just recently at Causal, one of your recent comics there. It's a lot to do with time travel. Do you find that your physics experience, gave you a lot of inspiration for that story, or?
Yeah, I guess yes and no. Like, I mean, I often get kind of pulled into conversations and sort of story editing around like sci-fi, time travel in particular, and I try and avoid it, to be honest, as much as I can, because I keep telling people, look, time travel is not real. It's like everyone tries to kind of keep drawing these pictures, and I'm like, look, it doesn't really matter what you think, because it doesn't work that way. I'm always interested in kind of like integrating scientific ideas into my work, but I always kind of want it to be like character first, world first, and then kind of the science kind of like the sprinkle on top that kind of helps just kind of give it like an extra flavor. And so I kind of steered away from writing it specifically about physics for quite some time. But acausal, like, it was just an idea that I had about time travel, but not people, not things traveling through time, but information, because I think that's like interesting to me. And so it felt like a lot more grounded, and I tried to root it like in a more grounded kind of setting, with the characters being like an RCMP officer and like a criminal, to kind of have that kind of crime sort of element and sort of focus the story that way. It could easily go like to a more grandiose kind of time travel epic, but I don't really enjoy those as much, to be honest. I think like it's really hard to be consistent. So yeah, I kind of steer away from it as much as I can. Like, I'm always happy to help other people kind of talk through ideas for their stories, and using ideas from physics I think is great to kind of give context for some of these ways of telling stories, when people are kind of trying to ground it in something that's like quote unquote scientific. But ultimately, I kind of think it still has to be, for me, it has to be sort of character first, and that's the thing I care about. I don't care about the science as much.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, because I found too that you could have the greatest plot and ideas in the world, but if the characters that are living it, the characters that are telling the story or that you're watching the story through aren't real, or don't feel, if you don't care about the characters, you won't care about the story, no matter how good it is. That's basically what I'm trying to say. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah, I think that's true. It's just, I just think it's like many things, you can kind of spice things up, and I think like that's how I kind of think about like the science stuff. A little bit of physics kind of spices it up, but it doesn't. It's not the story isn't hinging on it, because that wouldn't be good.
Yeah. I find that a lot too, especially with new authors and stuff, where it's like you're trying to make a soup, but you forget that you're making a soup, and you end up just putting too many herbs in a pot.
That just sounds like my cooking in general, though, unfortunately. So everything becomes a soup. I'm like, like this was supposed to be a burger, but it's come out as a soup. So it's
I as an avid lover of soup, I can't say that that's a bad thing.
Okay. Now you've outed yourself now. Okay.
Yeah. So that's crazy. Okay, so you write a lot of different things then, obviously, because you've mentioned your first foray into storytelling was screenplays for Star Trek, and I know you for your writing of comics. And recently on Kickstarter, you launched a horror anthology, correct?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I've moved kind of more into doing fiction of late. Just I think this stems back to like what the story I was telling at the start about the being in a punk band. The thing about being in a punk band is that you have this DIY ethos, and I really like that. Although I love like writing screenplays and working in film and TV, kind of there's so many gatekeepers. Like things just get brought and they never get made, and it's really frustrating. I know lots of people who like they have a they have a living like as a writer, but nothing's being made. And for me, like comics and books, I can actually make them. So I kind of been moving more in that direction of late. And so You Consumed was the book that like I put out last year. It was a 28 story horror anthology. So I kind of solicited submissions from people, and then I had to go through the hundreds of submissions, and then whittle them down and pay the authors for the story rights, and then kind of put the collection out. And I really like it. Like it's a great thing. It kind of, for me, it's kind of going full circle back to those kind of horror anthologies I would read as a kid. I would always kind of pick them up in the store and kind of flip through them, and you just never knew what you were going to get. Like the stories just change, like stylistically, tonally. Like it's just really interesting, and I kind of always wanted to kind of work in an anthology and like put one together. So I kind of finally got around to doing it. It took up the whole of last year, unfortunately, but it was good.
That's awesome, though. Yeah, it's something I've always wanted to do was to create an anthology for other people's work and stuff, not just like I did my own with The Dark Below the Ice, and that was just 12 short stories I chucked together that tonally fit, but they were all over the place too. You had fantasy and supernatural, and then real world drama and all sorts of stuff was in there, but tonally they were all dark stories. But I've always been too chicken, so good on you for pulling it off, man. Like I can't even imagine what it must have been like working with other authors.
I mean, it's great. I mean, you kind of go and see a little bit into how other people write and their process, and I think that's always interesting because as a writer, you have the way that you work. I don't know if it's the same for you for every book. When you sit down, like for me, like it's often, I have kind of like an idea of like how I'm going to approach a story, but sometimes it's kind of it changes quite a lot, and just seeing how other people work and how they think and then how they edit. It was just really, really interesting from that perspective, just to kind of get a flavor of seeing other people's work up close and kind of helping. Like work with them to kind of bring their stories to like a final form. Yeah,
it's pretty much the same thing for me too. You sit down, you write, you do your editing and stuff. But yeah, I guess when it comes to other people's work, I mean, I know how much of a perfectionist I am with my own, and I think it's just outside my comfort zone to be able to take on bringing someone else's work to life, because I guess I question myself and I'm like, am I going to fail this? Like, is it not going to be what they were hoping for?
Yeah, no, I think, I'm sure I failed like in some ways too, but I think that's the thing that I'm kind of thinking more about, like just in general is, the fear of failure kind of holds us back from doing a lot of things. And I think it's okay to fail, as long as you don't make the same mistake twice. So I'm kind of just trying to push myself a little harder to kind of try new things. And if I do fail, that's okay. I just keep going. So I don't want to be so hard on yourself. I mean, I think, I kind of think putting together like an anthology of other people's work or working with other people is really sort of, you have a taste. You're curating really as much as anything, because when I was looking at this, I had some great stories in the submissions that I didn't include in the anthology. Some really wonderful stories, but I just couldn't put them together. You're kind of trying to make an album, like in many ways, like you want to have variety between the stories, and you don't want to have the same story kind of replicated in the book, and you don't want to have them too close together. You want to give the reader kind of room to kind of go from sort of like an intense tale into something a little bit more relaxed. And I had to leave a lot of the stories out, like for that reason, just because I couldn't see how they would fit together with other stories that I wanted to include. And I think that's just my taste was just that. And you know, it wasn't that the stories weren't good. It's just that they didn't jive with what I wanted to do and the kind of book I wanted to put together. And I think you have that as a writer. You have that taste, and I think you know instinctively like what is going to be something you can work with another writer on, and something that you just don't see a natural way into it.
Yeah, that's true. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. So with all of your experience, John, do you have a favorite media to write for? Like, what do you think?
That's a great question, and the answer is no. I mean, I'm just interested in lots of different things. And I know that's kind of, you know, a red flag for many people, because a lot of advice is kind of, well, you know, just stick to one thing and just get really, really good at it. And I find that kind of constraining, because I'm just interested in lots of different things. And it doesn't mean though that like I just take a story and just go, oh well, this is one story, I'm just going to make it a comic or make it and then turn it into a film or something. Like, because I don't believe that that's the way of doing things. You know, I love comics. I love reading comics. I have story ideas, and I'm always kind of thinking like, what is this story idea? Is it a comic? Is it a book? Is it a film? Is it poetry? Like, I mean, I'm always trying to think about what's the right vehicle for the story. Sometimes it's really surprising, because like I'll try and tell I kind of have a story idea, and I'll be like, oh, this is like going to be a TV show. Like, this is definitely a TV show. And so like I start thinking about it as a TV show and start breaking it. Sometimes I'll even start writing it after I've done, you know, gone through the process. And then I kind of get to a point, I'm like, you know what? This really isn't a TV show at all. Like, this is not what I thought it was. Like, and I've got like a lot of folders on my laptop of just like abandoned kind of TV projects and film projects, because they're not the right medium to come in and be working it. So I'm always kind of sensitive to that, but I do like working in all these different formats, because they're so different and they're so challenging in different ways. And I think that's the thing that like I think the physics part of me is that like I'm a problem solver, and I like to think about putting myself in a box and having to solve a problem. And you kind of do that sometimes when you kind of like put in a story together as a film. Like, what is this? It's kind of a puzzle box. And then the same thing with a comic. It's like, well, how do I do this? Like, how do I make this story into a comic? Like, make it a good comic? They're just different kind of challenges. So I kind of go through phases where, you know, I'll be like more like, oh, I'm more gravitating more to fiction and comics like I am right now, but I know that'll change again, and I'll start drifting back to kind of writing features again.
That's really cool. That, you know, I love that. I love that you think about what media the story demands, like what media it wants to be. That's awesome. That's an awesome idea. And you know, like I think about like Scratcher, you know, and I can't imagine Scratcher being anything but a comic.
Yeah. I mean, me too, and that's the problem. I think that's why, like, you know, lots of people have optioned it and kind of not really been able to turn it into anything else. And I think that's the challenge of it, is that like I when I had that story idea, and I sort of did kick it around, like what was the right way to tell it? Like it just became a comic. It just felt like that was the way it needed to be expressed. And I think part of that now is that like it's once you kind of put it into a form like that and you put it out into the world, it is hard for you to kind of then think about what it would look like if it wasn't that. Like the counterfactual doesn't exist, and then it's kind of really difficult to kind of see like how you would adapt it. I mean, I know I have ideas for it, but like I don't know if like they would actually be good. I think the comic itself is the thing that stands on its own 2 feet as being the definitive story. And yeah, it's kind of just hard to think about it another way. But the same with you with Cloudbreakers, right? I mean, you know, it's got a big scope, and I could see it. Like I could see this as like a TV show. But I don't know if you would see it that way, you know, like it's your world and your characters that you're creating. And I think, you know, you see it like a specific way, and other people can kind of see it differently. But I don't know if you find that.
Yeah, no, for sure, absolutely, and it's interesting you bring that up because you remember when you came to see me in Granville for my signing during the tour
Yeah,
there,
yeah.
and that guy came by asking about rights. I don't know if you were there when he came by
No,
or not.
no, I wasn't. No.
Yeah, it's like this guy came by and I gave him the spiel and he bought the book and he left. And then like an hour later, he came back with his wife.
Okay.
And I guess his wife was a TV producer and they asked about rights. And I told him, I said, yeah, they're available. But honestly, I'd never thought of it until that point. But now that
Yeah.
I do think about it, I think the only thing that would do Cloudbreakers justice other than the novels would be like an animated series, like
Yeah.
Arcane League of Legends type animated series. I can't see the scope being done justice with live action.
Yeah, I think it'd be difficult to do. It'd be difficult to do it well anyway, like because the budget would be just really difficult to kind of get to. But yeah, I mean, I think I think animated could work. But ultimately, I mean, as a writer too, though, you have to kind of think about what are they going to offer you, right? Like,
Yeah,
I mean, if you do sell the IP, or well, you're not selling it. If you option it, for example, like you want to be compensated for that. Like too often, like I think authors, something I see it in the comics world a lot. We kind of give up our IP for like practically nothing, and like, we get nothing out of it. And that's not okay. I think that's a different conversation, but I think it's part of the business side of it that we often don't really sort of get into as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Do you find in the comics and stuff that there's a lot of difficulty with sharing the IP with the visual developers, like your artists and stuff as well, or?
No, I mean no. So I mean at my level, like I'm working in the indie space, and so we do have like contracts and have work for hire agreements with artists and letterers and colorists, for example, and we make it kind of clear who owns what. And I always, when I'm working on a comic, I always kind of pay out all my collaborators first, so they always get paid right away, and I know I get paid last. That's just the way I kind of do it, and I take on a lot more of the risk, but like I own more of the IP, and if the book succeeds, and then everybody else succeeds because they share in the success. So we try and make it all clear in writing. So it's not. I don't think it's too much of a problem. The challenge comes when you have to work with bigger publishers, because then publishers want to. They want to then own everything, but they also then want to own it like for all formats full time, and then that becomes a struggle for the creators, because then you're kind of in the middle as the writer, that you want the book to come out, you want people to buy it like in stores, so you kind of want a publisher that's going to go into the direct market, but you also have a responsibility to yourself and to the creators who you're working with and the book to not hand everything over. So that's the fine line. So I think when you're doing it yourself, I think you can control it more. But if you're working with other publishers, then you're at the mercy of their kind of legal departments in some ways.
Yeah, it's that whole Todd McFarlane versus Marvel conversation, hey? Like,
yeah, I mean, we've seen it. There's a bunch of publishers who've come and gone recently in comics who they were basically IP farms. They were basically buying up comics and just with the sole intention of not really of like celebrating them as actual comics, but kind of just using them to set up deals for TV or film rights. And I think in those situations, I'm not always clear whether the creators are aware of that, like when they go into those deals. So that's where you often kind of read a lot of these stories that break about the things that are happening and creators being sort of screwed out of the rights. It's unfortunately a medium that's kind of rife with all kinds of these examples, but I don't think it's too different from like film and TV and even from publishing. We just hear less about those stories in some ways, but it still happens.
Yeah, it's all behind the scenes stuff, eh? And it's a conversation I hear every single place I go, like whether I'm at CamCon talking to game writers that are, working for the big publishers like Modiphius or Wizards of the Coast. You hear it when you talk to traditionally published authors at the different events. Like, it's always the same kind of conversation when it comes to intellectual property. The moment capitalism gets involved, it just becomes that. It becomes less about the story you want to tell and more about the story that will sell.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So I get asked a lot of why I don't try to become a traditional publisher. Like, why don't you try to find an agent and get trad published? And it's like, well, the thing I like to say is I like to reference back when I went to school for writing for animation through Vancouver Animation School. And I had this absolutely amazing teacher named Jack Enyart. And he was an animation writer, wrote more Looney Tunes than anyone else in history. Like, the guy was a legend.
Yeah.
Sadly passed. He's passed from cancer now, sadly. But he, during the course, I created a pitch Bible based on my book, Legend of the Sunlight Prince. And after the course was over, with Jack's assistance, we tried pitching it, and I pitched to like Netflix. I pitched to WB, sorry.
Yeah.
I pitched to a whole bunch of places. And, to my credit, every single one of them responded, which is, I hear, apparently it's unheard of. Yeah.
Yeah. That's good.
But they all came back with the same thing. Like, you can't have a female lead character. Your characters are too old.
Wow.
Blah, 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 blah. Everything that came back was like, good story. We think it might work, but you've got to make these significant changes. And I'm like, no.
Yeah. No, good for you. Good for you for holding that line. I mean, that happens all the time, right? I mean, that's the thing. I think, when you go that route, like, I see it, like, I had a lot of experience with films when I was doing that, when I take out scripts and like people just keep asking for changes, and like, they're not making the story better, they're making the story worse. So good for you for holding that line. I think going your own route, like, I'm a big proponent of DIY creation and like working at an independent level. I love that. I think it gives you a lot more flexibility and a lot more control, a lot more of, you have to do a lot more, because just in general, just across the board, because you are the person who's responsible for hiring an editor, putting a cover together, doing the marketing, doing the you have to do everything. Like, traditionally published stuff, you have in theory, you have other people doing that, but I think in practice we don't see that. I know people who've got books out and they're ones having to do the marketing because the marketing department just doesn't do anything. So there's not, there's an illusion, like with traditional published stuff, in some ways, that like you're going to make money. And the reality is that like anything can change at any moment's notice. And that, like, even if you do have a hit, like the expectation is that your next book is going to be a hit. And then if it isn't, then you're basically blacklisted. Like you can't get another deal because, well, you struck out. And I think that's ridiculous. I think, at the indie level, like, it is, it is hard, but there's a stigma to it still, unfortunately, that people kind of think, well, you're kind of self-publishing, or you're doing Kickstarter or something because your book isn't good enough to go through the other doors. But like, those other doors are basically just closed. I mean, they're only interested in putting out books that have already got a lot of noise to them. You can go into like any bookstore, like not indie bookstores, but like if you go to like Chapters or something, I mean, the books they're all like written by people already famous who already have a platform. Like, those are the things that they gravitate to, and those are just basically not very good.
They're phoned in, right?
They are. I mean, they're written, they're ghost written or something, but like they're basically, it's just there to kind of, as an advert for something else, like as part of like pop culture in general. It's not necessarily to tell a story. So, I think there are benefits to being traditionally published, but I mean, the downsides are, just seemingly increasing like year after year, and I think just doing your own thing is harder, but it's more rewarding.
Yeah. And it's so cool to hear that perspective from somebody that has their fingers in so many industries too, right? Like,
yeah, I think, if you think about it, like, is in like filmmaking is like, it's kind of driven by like independent producers. Like, it's people, filmmakers, like writers, producers, directors, putting things together themselves and then making a film and selling it to somebody else. There isn't the same kind of like system in place like there is like for books. I mean, in the same way that like you can get a book deal before you kind of even written the book, but like in films, it's kind of like you typically have to make the entire thing first before and then sell it. It's only kind of like the upper kind of levels and echelons of writers when you can kind of walk into a room and sell a film with like a clever one-liner. I think those days are gone too. So I think it's proof of concept is there. So if you have to do the proof of concept anyway, then like why should you do that and give it away? Like if you created it and you did all the work, why should you then cut in somebody else? Like on the promise that they're going to increase the sales, but like I don't know. Like I mean, you sold like a lot of your books. I mean, are you unhappy with the sales? I mean, you worked hard to sell those books. I mean, I think if you had a traditional publisher, do you think it would be a massive difference? I mean,
honestly, I think you're hitting the nail on the head right there. Like I think if I went with a traditional publisher for Cloudbreakers, like, yeah, sure, my book would be on a lot of shelves in the country, but I think at the end of the day, people still don't know my name yet. At the point I'm at in my career, yeah, I'm thrilled with the amount of books I've sold so far. And I'm actually not even thinking about sales at this point. At this point in my career, I'm just thinking about exposure. Like how many people know who I am?
Yeah.
If I claim a loss in my taxes every year for the next 3 to 4 years, as long as I'm showing improvement, I'm thrilled.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you're building a back catalog of work, and eventually, once you get to that point, people will seek you out and they'll go, oh, I didn't realize there were so many books I can go buy. So there's like a long tail to this stuff, and I think if you're interested in kind of going into this kind of storytelling, I think that's what you have to think about. It's not quick wins, it's a long game. Having a contract. I mean, think about it, even if you're a traditional publisher, if you get a deal, you get like a third like payment up front, like a third when the book's done, and then a third like a year later. Like that's a lot. That's kind of like it's quite a short time, but like it's kind of you're living on a third of what the total deal is,
and that's assuming that it sells enough to cover that advance back.
Yeah, the advance.
I hear that from a lot of people at these different author conventions where they're like, "Oh, the traditional publishers are giving these advances out, but if the sales don't meet the advance, they claw it back, right?
Yeah, exactly,
or you just don't get it. So what's the difference?"
and then like the question is that like if you go back into the publisher and you haven't earned out your advance, and you say, "Hey, I've got another book." Are they going to take you on because they've just had an experience where like their expectations haven't been met, and their expectations may not be your expectations, and it's not always clear because you're dealing with a contract and it's about like legal language at that point. It's not about people. Are your expectations the same? Like I don't always know if they are. I think as we see like the corporate consolidation, we're going more and more away from creators having the same sort of goals and expectations as publishers. So I think this is diverging, but that's why I also think that this is an opportunity for independent creators, because I think Kickstarter and other crowdfunding platforms have really shown that there's a hunger for people who want to take risks with their storytelling. If you just want to read something that's kind of middle of the road, it's like, yeah, there's lots of places you can go and do that. But I think if you're treating like indie creation in the way that you and I kind of think about it, like you're telling stories that you want to tell that are like a little bit outside the mainstream and then maybe don't conform to kind of like the mainstream expectation, but there is an audience who are looking for that now, and they see that there's other opportunities. They don't have to go to an Amazon to kind of buy it. They can go to a different platform and like pre-order it from the creator themselves, and I think it's just an exciting time when you think of it that way.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of interest in contact with creators. Like that's just it. And I find that when I go to conventions versus the bookstore signings, like bookstore signings, you get maybe 1 of 10 people will stop to actually talk to you at the table. The rest of them are just like, oh, neat, an author signing books, and they walk by to go buy their candles or whatever they're in Indigo for that day. Right? But like at conventions, almost every single person who walks by your table stops and chats for a bit, or at least that's what I've found so far, right?
I mean, I think that's always been my experience too. I mean, I think that's the good thing about cons is that, you know, you have an experience. You know, we're moving into like an interesting time, I guess. I use the term interesting kind of very loosely in terms of like, you know, AI, you know, all these other technologies everywhere that are kind of threatening to have a big impact on creative careers. But I think the one thing that doesn't really change is that kind of engagement and connection you have between a creator and somebody in person. Like it's just a wonderful opportunity. And even if you don't sell a book at a con, I guarantee that you're always going to have like an interesting conversation, or you're going to meet new people or get new people on a mailing list or something. There's always something that value that you can get from that experience that will serve you down the road.
For sure. And even if you don't meet the public, you're going to meet another creator who might become a very good friend of yours, right?
Yeah, no, exactly.
Right, John, right?
No, but exactly. I mean, like we met like in that exact environment, and it's like anything. Like you just don't know who you're going to run into, and like how they're going to be in your life, and how they're going to show up in your life, and you have to be open to those things. And I think that's a great thing. It's just, you know, it's a lot of work because it's all on you as the person to have to kind of show up even when you don't want to. But it's rewarding. I just found it like it's one of my favorite things to do is to go to cons. Just talking to people about comics, it's just great.
Yeah, for sure. An interesting point that you brought up Kickstarter, because it gives me the opportunity to mention that, you know, like we're recording this episode a week ahead, so I have no idea what's going to happen. But my very first Kickstarter launched yesterday, so like April 1st, right? I mean, as we're recording this, it's only in pre-launch, but it will have gone live by the 1st. And I got to tell you, like, how many Kickstarters have you done now, John?
So I'm actually about to launch one as well, like on the 7th of April, and that'll be the 10th one I've run myself. I've been involved in others on different platforms as well as Kickstarter. Some have succeeded, some have failed. So I'd say so. I've run 10 myself, and I've probably been involved in about another 5 or 6. So it's
So I got to ask then, given that this is the first one I've ever done, do they ever get easier? Like, do you reach a point after a few of them where you're less anxious leading up to launch?
No. So does it get easier? It gets easier in the sense, so the technology is changing. So Kickstarter are actually listening to creators now, which is good. So like the actual building of a campaign, for example, actually becomes a lot easier once you kind of once you've got one, because, you know, you can import all of the rewards, for example, from your previous campaigns, which is like saves you a lot of time. And the actual building of the campaign page, you still have to, of course, you know, bring some of the audience to your campaign. So you still have to do the same kind of amount of, you know, building a mailing list, engaging with that mailing list. Mm-hmm. So all that kind of is there, but it does get easier because you've already done it once. Like the anxiety though is always going to be there. Like, I mean, especially like right now, because, you know, there's all kinds of other factors in the world that can kind of go against you for why people are not going to back your campaign. And it's got nothing to do with the quality of the book or the quality of the story or anything that you've done. You know, it's just that, like, if lots of people suddenly get laid off, then they don't have the income that they would normally spend on books. And so you may notice that. So it's that anxiety is always going to be there, I think, no matter how many campaigns you launch. You just got to get better at managing it. And I think I remember like the first campaign I ran, like the thing that drives you the most insane is kind of like having that app on your phone, because you kind of constantly keep refreshing it to see what's happening, and it's I totally understand the need to do that, but it's going to drive you crazy. You have to kind of put the phone down once you launch. You kind of like send it out through your channels and then put the phone away and then just leave it and then pick it up later in the day, because otherwise you will literally be staring at it all day.
Yeah, just wondering what happens. I mean, yeah, I'm 6 days from launch here as we record this, and like just sitting in pre-launch, and every morning I look at my phone and it's like, you have 8 people following, you have 10 people following. It's like, oh my god, what? Man, it's anxious. I mean, fun. I'm having a blast, but I'm also suffering from scope creep. Like every day I'm coming up with a new swag idea that I could toss in, but I'm like, gotta be careful, because you get overwhelmed with all this stuff super easily.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing I kind of talk about with other creators quite a lot about that, because I think you have to be smart about it, because digital tiers are great. Because they can offer like a lot of value to people backing it, but they don't necessarily cost you as a creator like a lot more. But the temptation is always to kind of go, oh, I'm going to throw another book in, like a physical book, and then like a print, and then some other stuff, and suddenly the shipping costs that you calculated just obliterated. Especially right now, because I saw yesterday that like. Was it like the U.S. Postal Service was asking for like an 8% increase on postage costs, and it's kind of like, well, again, you can't predict these things, but then you don't want to keep adding like stuff into a package to kind of ship to people, because it's you'll just end up losing money. So it's a tricky one.
I love the idea of digital stuff, though. That's fantastic. Just because a lot of people, like you said, a lot of people that back these kind of creators are DIY people themselves. So, for example, if I wanted to throw up STLs of some of the characters or models that I have, it's like, well, you can print them yourself.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and that's a great tier to have for people. I don't think I know that you probably kind of feel like, oh, I'm just like the scope creep is kind of getting worse, but I think it's having the ideas. I think, when I kind of talk to people about their campaigns, they're often like, well, I've just got the book. And it's like, okay, but like, you can still turn that into a bunch of tiers. And they're like, well, I don't know how to do that. And it's like, well, you just have to think creatively. I mean, even if you have like one book, you kind of got like a digital version of it and then a physical version of it. So you can have a digital only tier, then a physical only tier, and then the digital and physical tier. And then you can have a digital and physical and then signed physical tier. Like you can kind of like build this campaign up just very simply with not very much, but you just have to have the ideas. And it sounds like you're having a lot of ideas, and that's not a bad thing at all. Some of the things that you've probably got, I have this with my campaigns all the time. You offer a tier and no one backs it. So like after the first week, if no one's backed it, I'm just like, well, okay, no one wants it, so I'm gonna take it down, and then maybe I'll switch it in with another tier. So you can have these ideas, and you just have to test and see what people gravitate to, and if they don't gravitate to something, then switch it out for another idea.
That's great. Yeah, that is all a learning experience. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and this is the thing about it, is that like it really is kind of engaging with an audience, and because they'll tell you what's working. So often, like on your campaign page, like I'll change things. I'll see, you post about like the campaign, and like you have your text already, you have all your story there, but like sometimes it's like the order that you have to put the text in to grab people right away. Maybe that's the thing that they need to kind of activate them. Maybe they, something you've got further down the page is the thing that you need to move further up. So you're constantly tinkering with these things all the time to kind of try, and it's not an optimization, but it's just trying to sell the story and what you're making to the right people in the right way. You just don't know what that looks like until you actually start collecting data on it.
Yeah, it's like an evolution. Yeah. So that's awesome, man. Well, just looking at the time here, John, and we're getting close to the end of our show here. So I do this super fun thing with all my interviews, where at the end of our interview, I ask you one more question, and it's usually something silly and just kind of designed to be fun. Are you ready?
Yes. I'm ready. I'm just bracing myself. Yes, I'm ready. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. And, these are, feel free to swear and everything because I do mark all my episodes as explicit. So don't have to worry about that.
I've been holding my tongue so far. So trying to behave. Yeah.
Here we go, boss. In your Scratcher comic book, which I'm a huge fan of, so I had to do this, but in your Scratcher comic book, the central premise about tattoos being like demonic and taking people over, right?
Yep. Correct.
What is the dirtiest tattoo idea that you had that didn't make it into the books?
The dirtiest? I think like the dirtiest tattoo I've thought of was kind of like having like a tattoo on the butt of like Bugs Bunny. Remember the classic episode of Bugs Bunny and Elmer Fudd with the hunting season? I was thinking about like having the Bugs Bunny one like pointed at someone's buttholes and saying like I can't remember what he says in the cartoon, but like the same thing, like I know you're in there or something, like something like that. That's what I was thinking about, like. But
oh man, that's awesome. That would be what a great idea for a tattoo. You could even do that on your belly button. There you go.
Yeah, you could. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But that would be
pointing at your belly button.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So that was what I was thinking. Yeah. Obviously, awesome. But the editorial part of my brain, I knew that was not going to be that's not a winning formula for a horror comic, but for many reasons. But I always kind of think about that.
Oh man, that's great. That would have been a fun one. That would have been a fun one for sure.
Oh yeah, I would have been sued into oblivion, though, unfortunately. But
WB probably wouldn't have been super happy about that.
No. But we'll see what happens in the future. Who knows? Maybe a season 2 of Scratcher. We'll see.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah. So if the listeners want to follow you anywhere, John, where's the best place to find you and follow you online?
Yeah, I'm on like Blue Sky and Instagram mostly, but yeah, if you go to my website, which is arbutusfilms.com, you can find all of the links there. That's probably the place I'd send people. So you can check out like my books and my comics and my films and everything there, and find where I am like online. That's where I would go. arbutusfilms.com.
Right on. Awesome. Well, thanks for joining us today, John. It was an awesome chat and always a pleasure to have these conversations with you, my friend.
Yeah, you too, man. It's great. And I can't wait for your campampain. So hopefully when it comes out, it'll be already successful. So,
yeah, wouldn't that be something? Eh?
Yeah, that'd be great. Yeah. That'd be great.
All right. And as we said there, as John and I mentioned, within just past the 48-hour mark, campaign successful. So what a great feeling. I just got to say, what a great feeling. I know why everybody does it. I really do. It's a roller coaster. It's stressful. It's exciting. It's scary. Trying to think of what to offer people if people are going to enjoy what you're putting up. And, it's just putting something of your own out there into the world. So I'm glad I did it. It's a hell of an experience. And Cloudbreakers Peregrine releasing to the world 5th of June, 2026. Kickstarter's live now. Back if you want to get it early. As always, I hope you enjoyed today's show. If you have any comments or questions, please reach out. Let me know. Send me an email through the contact portion of my website, www.kentonjmoore.com. If you're interested in being a guest on the show, please fill out that same form. Let me know a little bit about yourself and what you'd like to talk about. And as always, enjoy story. I hope you have a fantastic and healthy and safe week ahead as we look forward to the next episode, beginning the sequel series with Astra Crompton 2, the sequels, on more about storytelling.
Fade to black. The end.